to spend. All right, they arguably break rules to do it as well, but they make so much money selling players that never get anywhere near their first team. That's not something that we've done at all. So that handicaps us a little bit. But ultimately, yeah, you look at some of the prices, especially because Arsenal fans like to be picky as well when it comes to Premier League proven, right? So there's the group of people that don't want Gyökeres because he's not done it in the Prem or he's not done it in the top league. But you look at some of the prices, Anthony Elanga for 55 mil. Anthony Elanga doesn't upgrade our starting 11. But if you wanted to bring him in as a backup to Saka, which would upgrade the level of the squad, that's 55 mil. That's a lot of money to spend on a player like that. So
Facts.
It's I think it's really tough to find the balance, especially if you want to go young as well. And you want to have a squad that kind of can develop and maybe, I mean, with Saka, it's difficult because you forget how young he still is himself. Like, it's difficult to go younger than Saka anyway. But yeah, I just feel like the overall balance of the squad was something that needed to improve last season, just because the attack was light, the depth of the attack was light. And so that's where actually I think if we bring in like 3 attacking players this summer, I still wouldn't want us to sell more than 1 because we needed that depth.
We need the depth.
Yeah.
Like, we're being like, that's the thing. You can't have your cake and eat it. Obviously, there is an element of maybe not necessarily sell to buy because of PSR, but you have to have a well-balanced squad. You can't have 20-odd first-team regulars all trying to play for their countries at the World Cup and stuff. You have to be able to mix and blend. But I do think we're at that stage of we need proven quality, and not necessarily Premier League, but even with Gyökeres, obviously there's many a question mark over him, but kind of what you see is what you get. He's 27. He's been about for a while. Zubimendi, I'm sure there's a lot of scope to go, but he's 26. You kind of see what you get. You throw in the players we've got already. To a degree, Rodrygo and Eze would fall under that. That's where I kind of am at, because, football can be romantic. We're Arsenal fans. Of course, I want to sign players that are unknown and they become great players, or players that, weren't given love at their former club. They've come here and now it's working. But I do think we're at that stage where if we are to work with talents, let's work with what we've got. Like you mentioned, Mosquera, the Valencia lad, we've got a proven track record with defenders. You work with him. I don't quite buy this, but for an example, try and get something out of Martinelli, take Nwaneri and Ethan to the next level. That's probably why I'm not with the Madueke signing, if I'm honest with you. Like, if he signs for Arsenal, I'll support you. You're a human being. And I don't think you're a terrible player. I don't think you're the answer. And I can understand how you could be used off the right. Arteta's never come out and said it, but we're hearing that he sees he can be a left wing. I don't really want the illusion kind of thing of what you could be. I kind of want to know what I'm getting, whether it kind of works or not. I've left this pinned here for a while, yeah. If it comes down to, the 3 players and it's more the high caliber targets, so Eze 60 odd, Gyökeres we've committed 70 odd, Rodrygo, God knows how much that is, and it's a case of Madueke or Eze, where do you stand on that? And where would you stand if they went the opposite to what you want to go with?
For me, out of those 2, if you could only take one, 100% it's Eze. I think the versatility of him, the fact that he can actually add something to us centrally, the fact that actually, if you're spending that much money on either way, if you're saying they're not going to be like a nailed-on starting 11 player, Madueke is going to get far less opportunity if he's coming in to effectively be the backup to Saka, because all going well, Saka is going to play the vast majority of games. Like, we complained about him being run into the ground, but really you want him to be rested in, Carabao Cup games against way lesser opposition, maybe the same in the FA Cup if you get a good draw, and like a handful of the easiest Premier League games. But ultimately, if you're paying 50 mil for Madueke to fill in just on those occasions, I feel like that could be used elsewhere. Whereas Eze, for me, I'd be looking at bringing him off the bench almost every game, or either off the left, centrally, off the right. Like, he could still cover Saka off the right. So yeah, for me, and he's so 2-footed as well, which I absolutely love. So yeah,
level raiser as well in his own way.
Yeah, and I think I would back him, and he'd back himself to actually try and nail himself down as a starting 11 player. And it would also have someone that is like a seasoned professional, not an Ethan or a Max Dowman that's coming through, someone that could genuinely put the pressure on Martin Odegaard. So if we are in a situation, like I said, where I back Odegaard with one more season to find his level again, but if there's someone actually knocking on the door, and 3-4 months into the season, we're seeing the same kind of performances from Odegaard as last season, then you've got someone there that can push on and take it. So yeah, for me, he would have to be the one if you could only have one of him in Madueke.
I think I'm the same. I think only Madueke's family members would put him above Eze, and maybe not even some. And I think crucially, you said it there. Yeah, I've got no evidence to go off this, but I back Eze off the right if Saka's not there a lot more than Madueke, even though it's his strongest position. I don't expect Eze to exclusively play off the left, but at least if we were to sign him today, I could say I'm just a football fan. I genuinely think you're a better option than Trossard or Martinelli. Now, if you throw Madueke into that mix, we've got three players where it's kind of the same things we've been doing for the last couple of seasons with Trossard or Martinelli. It's just whichever one's in a great run of form. They're not bad players, but they're in boots that they ultimately can't fit, kind of thing, if that makes sense. And that's where I'll be looking at it, because I do understand we ain't got the city money and all of those things, but then when we do have finances available, it's even more pivotal for us to get it right. And you also made a good point about indirectly, you didn't necessarily say this, but putting pressure on Odegaard. Pressure is a privilege, and I feel there's too much burdens on certain players at Arsenal. I feel Saka, we've been touching on it. I think every Arsenal fan knows if he don't do the business, we're kind of in issues in that. Whether Odegaard's form is there or not, I do find it, maybe because I'm a disciple of Arsene Wenger, I find it very weird and mundane, really, to just have the creative burden just on Odegaard. I know we create all over the field, but generally that's his role. And like you said there, if the form's not there, if he needs a rest, if we might need both of them on the pitch, that's where Eze applies to me. And obviously the romance, a former Arsenal player, 27, this is your big move, you're kind of here. With Madueke, I don't really want to talk about it, but you hear things around your tracking back, around your attitude, around your complacency. I don't know if you're necessarily a level raiser. Maybe Mikel Arteta or Arsenal's camp. I know teams tell players essentially like everything they want to hear, so they sign for the club, but they must have told him, listen, you might get more minutes than people are saying off that right hand side. You can actually be a left winger. You're going to be a key player. He's 23 with the potential to be playing in the World Cup next year. He might do, but I very much doubt he just wants to sit down and whatnot and just be on the bench and be a rotationary option. In which, in theory, I like that, because I don't want people to be here to make friends. Of course, I want you lot to all get on, but go and take someone's spot. Doesn't matter if you're Eze, Rodrygo, Nwaneri, if Odegaard's in the 10 and you want to play in that 10, go and take the spot from him. Go and give Arteta some headaches. Like when he's there with his missus and she wants certain things, he's thinking about the tactics and things of that ilk. Do you feel, yeah, like this is a good one? Eze, if we sell Martinelli or Trossard or even both, do you think we'd have to sacrifice both or one of the two? Both linked with moves away.
Yeah, I think one of them's going to leave this summer. To be honest, I think it's going to be Trossard. I think Trossard will end up going for a bit to Turkey, and then unless we get a big offer for Martinelli, I just don't think we'll end up doing it. But yeah, you're probably in a spot where you've got to factor in like Jesus is going to come back,
Forgot about him.
which bit like he's on big money, so even though I'm not convinced that he's going to come back at a level that's actually
He's even better off the left than Madueke potentially, but go on, bro.
yeah, probably. But I worry about him just because like the injury that he's had, the fact he's done both knees in, and how reliant his play style is on his knees. I do worry about it a little bit. But yeah, ultimately, if you bring in Eze, to do it, you must be like telling him he's going to play off the left, because otherwise, like where does he get in? So I feel like to have him and Trossard and Martinelli, where none of them, I mean, I probably want Eze off the right out of the three of them. Like I've seen Trossard off the right, never liked it. Martinelli could do a bit of a job there, but realistically, only when we're desperate. So yeah, I just feel like if you got three of them that are all kind of fighting for the same spot, you've just got to sell one of them.
You've got to sell one of them, and there is an element of finances because you couple in, what we've been talking about, and the income is obviously Magalhaes has signed a new deal. Fair enough, Miles Lewis-Skelly might not be the highest earner, but he's probably got a significant increase. We hope Nwaneri gets a new deal. We've touched on it there. You've got Gabriel Jesus and Havertz. I don't want to keep mentioning Havertz because I feel it feels like scapegoating, but they are on big money, and there's still unanswered questions in terms of kind of exits. There's a lot of spinning plates and a lot of work for Andrea Berta to do. I want to ask you, like, before, because we are indirectly going to touch on a lot of things we've spoken about yet, but I want to focus on Rodrygo. Do you really think he's that talismanic figure if he signs for the club? Do you think he's our Alexis Sanchez type signing, as some are saying?
Yeah, like I think it's one of those where because the parallels to Sanchez are there. Obviously, a lot of people have made the comparison, and that I wouldn't want him to come in and everyone just to be like, he's going to be Alexis Sanchez, because there's no guarantees that is the case. But I do feel like what we've seen from him, I mean, I don't think people like almost give enough credit for the fact he's played 260 games for Real Madrid at his age in an era where Real Madrid have won everything. I'm like, that is very impressive. And he's done it off a side that he's not as comfortable on. So I do think he's ready to explode off the left, really. Obviously, it's a new environment. It's a new system. It's a new league. And it's a position that he's actually not spent that much of his career, as much as it is his preferred position, actually playing in. So there's no guarantees that he comes in and lights it up. But it's one of those ones where I just feel those opportunities to get that level of player at that age don't come around that often. And I'm absolutely certain he's going to leave Real Madrid. Like 99.9% he's leaving Real Madrid this summer. I think even yesterday Alonso came out and said he even sees Endrick as a right winger. So that means now there's like Arda Güler's ahead of him. They brought in Mastantuono and Endrick's possibly ahead of him. And it came out this morning that if they do sell Rodrygo, they won't go and sign in him to replace him, which tells you everything. They see him as a player that you could lose and not need to replace.
And it's not that deep.
So if we don't get him, where does he go? Man City, Liverpool, or PSG, in my opinion. So PSG don't
Chelsea
really need
throw their hat into the ring as well, whether they grab
Chelsea
him or
probably
not.
Will, yeah.
Maybe
but
even
ultimately,
Liverpool.
If he goes to another Premier League team and it's not us, and we're the ones that can offer him like guaranteed left wing, that will be yours. I just feel like we've massively fumbled it if we don't end up with him.
I'm with you with that. And also the one thing I'd give Rodrygo, like obviously when you've got with the greatest of respect, Rodrygo, you're great. You might leave that situation and you're held in higher regards. It's difficult to shine where you've got Bellingham now. Probably when we're talking about this, everyone's probably thinking about Vinicius Jr. and Mbappe and the rest of them. The one thing beyond Rodrygo having great technical ability and everything you said is he's on that. He seems the one that, at least even under Carlo Ancelotti, if you need him to track back, he doesn't think he's better than the kind of team which players of his caliber typically do. So on top of everything you said, I think it just makes sense for Rodrygo. And I don't want to say fans are not important, but clubs don't live or die necessarily by fans kind of opinions. I think Rodrygo, well, Eze would as well, but I think Rodrygo would tell fans, even the most loyal of Arteta fan or Arsenal fan, or even a fan that was pessimistic about the project, has shut their mouth. We've got second, doing what we're doing in the champs, and they need a bit of inspiration. I think signings are not everything, but Rodrygo would tell us, like, it's a statement in it. That is goosebumps to me. That is X Factor. That is those kind of things. And you factor in, if you did get Rodrygo and you've got Saka and you've got other people chipping in the squad, when we get into situations like PSG, where simply put, especially in the second leg, we just need a bit more quality. They can bail us out. I think this is an interesting question. Big up Mr. TXZ. What a name. How would you guys feel about Eze and Madueke and lose out on Rog? I think that means Rodrygo. It feels like that balances the squad well, as Eze can play in the 8 role as well, especially if there are offers for Nelly and Trossard. I mean, I'd be somewhat cool because I don't want to see a future for me where you get Gyökeres and Madueke. Like if we get 2 of potential 3, if you did get Eze and Gyökeres and you got Madueke, I could kind of breathe. But I mean, this is why we watch football. We want people like Rodrygo in it. So I think you'd have to get Eze for me. Rodrygo's a bit of a pipe dream for me. But where are you at with that?
Yeah, on that one, I mean, for me, I'd rather go Rodrygo, where I'm like, that is a guaranteed massive upgrade on the starting 11. And I still think there's enough depth beyond that. If you get Eze and Madueke, not that I think anyone is entitled to like a pathway at the club, but if you go and get someone that's a senior player that's going to compete for Ødegaard's spot and a right winger that's going to compete for Saka's spot, I wonder where that leaves you for Nwaneri. And I again, I'm not that bothered about like blocking paths, because I think if you're good enough, you'll smash your way through that path anyway, and you shouldn't be entitled to getting that luxury. But I just think I don't think you actually need it. I think Nwaneri is good enough and will be good enough that covering off those 2 spots to balance the squad isn't as important when it comes to, if you get there a Champions League final. I want the starting 11 to be the starting 11 that's going to win it, not the squad depth that might help you,
I don't think you're lying there, man. And that's the thing. It's like I think we all understand, like, we need to have squad players and players that can chip in and be a bit cute and clever. But when you get into situations where it's sink or swim, like, we might not realize them at the moment of playing the games. But I would say the last 3 years now, there's probably about 3 to 5 Premier League games where when it's all said and done, I look back in hindsight and think, oh, that's where the league might have not necessarily been won, but that could have been lost. Or you find yourselves when it's sink or swim against PSG, where first 20 minutes in the second leg, goals change games in it. Had we have had some players that could have done it, who knows where it would have been. And that's where I'm with you with that. I feel football is romantic, but there is a degree of can you do it, can you not? And I think we need more players that we can rely on. I don't feel half of these players are bad. I think if we want to keep being second, good top six record, doing what we're doing in the latter stage of the champs, we've got enough. But there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I think those questions needs answers. If obviously what you, me, and everyone in the chat wants, I assume they're Arsenal fans, in getting over the line, starting to win trophies and things of that ilk. I want to ask you a question about Mikel Arteta. Yeah, I know people want the Prem and the champs and all of those kind of things. Do you feel like after we won the FA Cup, like from then till now, if we won a couple of FA Cups again, if we won a couple of League Cups, do you think there'd be less pressure on him, or based on what you read in the newspapers and YouTube and everything, in terms of getting over the line? Because I do think next season's kind of sink or swim.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if winning. I don't think winning Carabao Cups would help at all. I think winning the FA Cup maybe helps a little bit. Like winning the FA Cup when he did definitely gave him time. And there were points in the next couple of years where maybe if he'd not won the FA Cup, he'd have been in a lot more danger. But I do ultimately think like we went through periods of winning FA Cups, maybe kind of being in the mix, and it wasn't enough. Like if you look at what happened to those managers, it wasn't enough. So yeah, ultimately, I think like we're at a stage with the squad that we've got where we've been competing now at the top for 2-3 years. You got to come away from that with a Premier League or a Champions League. Like if you don't come away from this period, yeah, exactly. Like the way football is, the way it works in cycles, we're not going to be at this level guaranteed for the next 10, 15 years. So you got to do it now. And so, yeah, I think the pressure will come on the Premier League and the Champions League. But equally, I think it helps with momentum and stuff if you do win a cup competition. If you win that Carabao Cup earlier on in the season, it takes a little bit of the pressure off for winning a trophy that season, but it also tells you like, yeah, we can get over the line. We are cup winners. So yeah, I think we need it. We need to be competing in all of them. I look at the squad and the depth that we've got, and I think we should be. And that's where I think, you know, if you're talking about like a Rodrygo and a Victor Gyökeres, you know, I was looking at the 3 cup competitions that we lost in last season. We lost over 2 legs to PSG, 2 legs to Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. And then the FA Cup game against United, we created 20 big chances across those like 5 games, and we scored 1 of them. And I'm like, that's insane. Like, it's actually insane. And that's it. You just need, ultimately, in those moments, especially in cup competitions where it's knockout on the day, you just need the players that are more than likely gonna do the business.
You triggered negative PTSD in me when you mentioned the FA Cup. I know Liverpool, when we went out the year before against Liverpool and obviously last season against Man United, they're very different. Like one was on penalties and whatnot, but it was the same thing in that you're creating some chances, you're not taking them. And unfortunately, you don't kill your opposition, you could end up being killed. While I don't feel the FA Cup and the League Cup is going to appease fans, I feel those that are saying in May or said in May, oh, a trophy's a trophy, we didn't win anything. I hear that. You're not necessarily wrong about that. But if next season we only win one of those things, we both know what is going to be said. Oh, it's the little man trophies. It's not one of the big ones. I would like the team to win because my unpopular opinion is there are some sympathies I give to Arteta for last season, but not really that far. Those above him, definitely not. I feel sorry for the fans and the players because obviously the players are the ones playing, but whether they were good or not, I think they were ran into the ground. I think they stood up to be counted. I think even players in poor form like Odegaard, they had to face the music. I feel in January they needed a bit of help. And I feel we kind of paid for the sins of what we didn't do last summer. Like what we're talking about now is what we've needed to do last summer. Looking at the left wing and striker, even when Martinelli had his great season, we tried to bring in Mudryk. So whether it's that, whether it's the tactical things like breaking down low blocks, these have been things that have been at our door, but we've not essentially fixed the roof while the sun's shining. So it's a bit of an issue. And another reason why I think, obviously, for me, I think Premier League is we have to give it a proper realistic fight. Champions League, you play it by ear. Once you get to the quarters and semis, you then can start to dream. I'm an Arsenal fan. I always want the FA Cup. League Cup, I'm not going to die, but if you're in it, you might as well try win it. And if you're in the semi-finals, get over the line. While I think it's now time, it's because we need to show we're a great team, not a good team. We're a good team. All the statistics show it, the tactics, all of that. We kind of live or die by our own mistakes, right? But I feel everything at our club, Rory, is kind of geared towards winning, but not actually tasting winning. Like we've got a dog called win. I know people boy Mikel Arteta, but all the stuff he does with the light bulbs and all of that. Everyone that understands football or just team ethics, you understand why these things happen, innit? So I think we're doing all of that. Now it's about tasting, what it's like being at Wembley with the champagne, whetting the appetite for that. Because I do feel if you go back to 2020, 2022, 23, or even a couple of years before that, we were trying to move into this realm. And I think we got there. Everyone was, at some point, everyone's inspired and all of that. Now I think, like the fans, everyone's questioning, what's going on here? How have we got there? There's an element of either regression or stagnation. Either one is not the direction we want to move in. What do you make of this on screen? Madueke and Eze is more of a solution than Rodrygo. I disagree, but what's your thoughts?
Yeah, again, I just disagree because like when it gets to the big crunch moments, they are a solution to a depth problem which may or may not exist. Rodrygo is a solution to winning on the biggest stage. Like he's been there and he's done it. So if I'm looking at a Champions League final, I'm going, all right, I've got Madueke on the bench. So if Saka gets injured, I've got a solution. But I've got a left winger that I don't necessarily back to score in the big as we saw with both Martinelli and Trossard against PSG. So that's, for me, it's where you can find solutions internally. Like I said, I think Nwaneri is a solution to a couple of problems with Saka and with Odegaard. Later in the season, Jesus will be back as a bit of a solution, hopefully. For me, Rodrygo solves a massive, massive problem from last season, which was teams aren't scared of our left-hand side. You are not going into a game where Rodrygo is on the left wing saying, don't worry about Rodrygo, mate. We'll keep marking Saka. Like, you're just not. So for me, that solves a much bigger problem.
I think you're back on the money. And even if you want to worry about Rodrygo and you say, let's triple up against Rodrygo and Saka, there's 11 players on the pitch. So you can't do that. That's going to have ramifications. And it goes back to what I said earlier. If we can find a way to penetrate central areas, then other players could benefit, because there'll be times, don't get it twisted, I want Gyökeres to get me 15, 20 goals, but there's going to be times, a bit like when we played Sporting, where he's going to be marked out of the game. The wingers can benefit. Declan Rice and that 8 could benefit. A fit Odegaard could benefit. Obviously, they're not Arsenal players, but the Rodrigos, the Ezes of this world could benefit. What do you think of Bukola? Because someone said, why not go for Bukola?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we would if he was available. It's one of those. PSG have literally no reason to sell him. So unless he was to push for a move, and I would still back him to back himself to be in that PSG side. I think once you're at a point where PSG won the Champions League, they'll probably be favourites to win the Champions League next season based on how well they won the Champions League this season. He's at an age where it's like, I can get another Champions League under my belt. There's not the same sort of reason for him to move as like a Rodrygo. So look, I'm sure if a deal was there to be done, we'd sniff around it. I think he's a great player. But
I mean, if we don't get Rodrygo, Rory, is there anyone out there with the same level of stature in the game that you would go for if money weren't an issue or anything of that ilk? Because I'll scratch him, man. The Nico Williams thing, I think we should just leave that alone with what's happened. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, Nico Williams now they've doubled his release clause, and he's on about 260 grand a week or something crazy. So yeah, I think he's just unavailable. I've never really bought into the Leao talk. Like, don't get me wrong, he's on his day player, brilliant. Lookman is one that I would look at if you could get him for a slightly cheaper fee, in terms of like that's a kind of a, it's a level raiser in terms of someone that I think is going to score goals off the left hand side for us.
Versatile as well, man.
Yeah, versatile. It's, again, if you're looking at Lookman on the left hand side, are you going to leave him 1v1 against a defender, knowing that he can skin a fullback and score on a regular basis? Probably not. So that's maybe one I'd look at. I keep seeing David Ornstein link us to Anthony Gordon, which is one that I'm like,
too much domino. I think, do you know what? It's going to sound mad. I think you got more chance of Rodrygo than Anthony Gordon. It just feels like, obviously there's a bit of a rivalry on the pitch with Arsenal and Newcastle, and I've got no evidence to go off. I just feel those decision makers at Arsenal and Newcastle, it's like chalk and cheese. They don't see eye to eye, so naturally they're going to make it difficult. Then, as you know yourself, we start throwing in the English tax, the Premier League proven tax, the fact of people want to overprice. I just can't. There's too many dominoes that need to fall. I still think the same with Rodrygo, but I think you got more case of that. But you are right in that Ornstein keeps, not even just Ornstein, like the Athletic and the credible sources, they keep mentioning the same names. And interestingly, they did mention Ademola Lookman. I feel we like Lookman. I feel every now and again there's players Arsenal like, and it doesn't really matter the price. They're prepared to overpay. Obviously, Sesko's now an exception to the rule. I think they like Lookman, but it's a case of how many dominoes need to fall into place. What's his wages going to look like, etc., etc. I mean, he is versatile, and a bit like Gyökeres, he might come back to England with a point to prove, because you're twice, maybe even 3 times the player than when you left. And unfortunately, even though you've gone and done things at Atalanta, some people are just going to remember the Ademola Lookman that in the last minute of the game tried to chip that penalty and it didn't really work out. So it would be interesting if we went for Lookman, and he would provide another one that I reckon is a better option than Madueke off the right, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, possibly. I think there was a period where it looked like he had like that big falling out at Atalanta
With Gasperini, innit?
with Gasperini, but I think they've kind of like patched that up now, so maybe not.
Be interesting to see, man. Like, it'll be interesting. I think he's got a year left on his deal, quote unquote. So this is the last summer. I'd imagine there's a lot of clubs that would be interested. And I've never been on the negotiating table, Rory, but it strikes me as one that clubs might explore other options. They know Atalanta want to get rid, and every day that ticks, there might be a little deal to have there. Because I do think the window is both proactive and reactive, in the sense that every club's planned for months what they want to go and do. 90% of the business is that, but then you never know. Players that you thought weren't available become available. Players and all of that kind of stuff happens. So that's what I want to see. I want to see us sign our players, get our players in for pre-season, start to think of some outgoings, and then I think the Rodrygo one is one that I expect to drag into the season potentially until September the 1st. What would you do with Nwaneri, with what Oslo Gooner saying? Would you guys loan Nwaneri if a Premier League club came in for him? Been a long time since we've seen some Barclays loans like Wilshere to Bolton. I might consider that in January. For me, Nwaneri's part of my plans, but where are you at?
Yeah, I think if you got to a point where he wasn't getting enough game time, maybe, but I feel like for me, he's of the same sort of caliber as Phil Foden at City, where they were like, we're not loaning Phil Foden out. We're going to develop him here to play our way and to reach the level that he can reach. I still feel like he's that, and especially like,
that's a good point.
If you don't bring in both Eze and Madueke, then I think you need Nwaneri as a genuine depth option. Like, as it stands, he for me is the backup to Martin Odegaard and kind of Bukayo Saka right now. So
exactly, like he probably is Bukayo Saka backup. I know seniority might go against him, but in the short term, he's probably that. I agree with you in that. I think he's backup for Martin Odegaard / long term, you're going to end up in those kind of roles. It was interesting. I mean, I remember in the season, Arteta said he could be a striker. I don't know where we're at with that. I don't really expect that, but you just never know. I think Nwaneri, for me, I think you've got the technical ability, or you wouldn't be in the first team. All the things he needs to improve and the question marks, it's not necessarily to do with Nwaneri. It's what someone at 18 years of age with 20, 30 games under their belt would have. He needs to get consistency, obviously stronger. I think the best thing he could do this pre-season, whatever Mikel Arteta demands of Odegaard, purely off the ball, because we all know how intricate that is. Try your best to get up to speed with that, and that might put you in a better stead to that. If Arteta ever thinks, do you know what, Odegaard's form's been a bit shaky, or maybe Odegaard's doing everything perfect, he just thinks, I can't leave you out of the side, go and give him some problems. It was my unpopular opinion last season in that I felt, especially with kind of what we were speaking about earlier with Trossard and Martinelli, I think Nwaneri could have got minutes off the left, because at least there's light at the end of the tunnel with him. With the greatest of respect to Trossard and Martinelli, we're kind of at where we're at. Like with Martinelli, I'm kind of past the point of he needs this midfielder, he needs that left winger. I love the guy, but you're not really. I'm at the stage, I guess, in that I just accept you for what you are. Like if the game's open, crazy games, you're going to be great. You could be a squad player. As a regular, it's a problem. As it stands, though, I still reckon the left-hand spot's yours. Rafa Leao's underrated under the right manager. I like Leao, but another one that's hot and cold. Don't get it twisted. I think he's overrated. And I don't mean that in that he's a bad player. Clearly got showmanship, clearly, 1v1 demon, got a lot of physical qualities. I think he could buy into the defensive aspects that Arteta wants, but over 10 games, I don't know what I'm getting from Leao. For that money, I kind of need to, for 3 games, probably going to be the best player on the planet. The next 3, the worst player on the planet. And then the rest of those 10 games going to be a bit indifferent, which I'm not really down for. There's been a couple of people asking me to ask you about Mitoma. Would you have him?
Not at this stage. I mean, how old's Mitoma now? Like
28.
28, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great player, but I mean, for one, didn't Brighton turn down like 100 million or something from
in January from Saudi, yeah.
Which is so it's like, how much is he going to cost? For a player that didn't light up the Premier League last season in the way that he did probably the season before. Yeah, I just feel like for the amount you pay for him, for what would ultimately maybe end up being like a role similar to what Trossard's done for us, I think it probably end up being expensive.
Big up Hand of Arsenal if that's actually him, you know how weird YouTube is. But if that is the real you, you're doing the Lord's work for us Arsenal fans in this summer window. The next time I pre your Twitter account, please tell me we've signed Lionel Messi or someone.